I'm excited to share some research that Molly and I engaged in that focuses on nonprofits in Douglas County. And so we're hoping that maybe some members of the audience might be people who participated in this survey. The title of this project is Resilience and Adaptive Capacity in Local Nonprofit Collaboration Networks. And really, this is Molly's work. So today I'm going to go through a couple definitions, provide some background data, and then we'll jump into results and talk about what the implications of those results are for being a nonprofit. So first, some definitions. On the heels of the pandemic, Molly and I were interested and wondering about how do nonprofits craft organizational resilience where they are able to reintegrate and transform following change. So this captures things like being able to engage in routine tasks, rapidly responding to changes, being resourceful, and overcoming disruptions. And we were also interested in how do nonprofits maintain what we would call adaptive capacity. That's the ability of the organization to learn and be responsive and innovative. So these are similar constructs, but they sort of lead the organization in different directions, because adaptive capacity is about what happens inside the organization in terms of building shared values and working together to solve problems, whereas organizational resilience is about how an organization responds in light of major changes. So to explore this question, we contacted nonprofits who served Douglas County residents. We sent out 181 invitations using data from the IRS. And we had a couple criteria. You had to be a nonprofit and you had to serve Douglas County, Kansas. And so we estimate that we have about 52 to 65% of the nonprofits in Douglas County who meet those criteria. And we have a total of 59 participants. We make that estimate based on the number of people who clicked into the survey but weren't qualified to participate. And our results are sort of interesting. What we have here is a social network, what we call a whole network, that shows those individuals who responded. So the image that's on the screen is actually an image of the network that we formed. We asked nonprofits to name up to 15 partners who they were connected with, and then we had them rate their resilience and their adaptive capacity, those measures that I told you about before. So in total, we had 648 connections among 240 different partners. And in the image, you can see that the node size, the yellow dot, is based on the number of connections that the nonprofit has with other nonprofits who were named in the network. We sliced and diced this network. We did some statistical analysis. And what we were interested in is sort of two major network properties. I'm sorry, I should advance my slides here. On the left side, we have what's called brokering. So brokering are these strategic positions that allow a nonprofit to connect across a boundary. So there are two specific measures that we use to capture that. The first is brokerage. That's about the position that the nonprofit is in the network to access otherwise inaccessible resources. And the second is betweenness centrality. That's the number of times that a given node in the network, one of the yellow dots, falls along the shortest path between any two other individuals in the network. The second side of this is what we call closure. And this is sort of the opposite property in networks. So instead of being connected across boundaries, when you have closure, you have a tightly knit or trustworthy network. And so closure is signaled by two properties. One is closeness. That's the sum of the distances from one actor, one yellow dot, to all other actors in the network. And in degree, the number of times that a nonprofit was nominated by other nonprofits as a key partner. So here's what we found. In terms of resilience, we found a 28% difference across the scale of resilience in terms of brokerage, betweenness centrality, and in degree. And what this tells us is basically that those actors who are really well positioned in the network are in a better strategic place to be resilient in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And in terms of betweenness centrality, right, they're able to connect others who would previously otherwise not be connected. But we also find that they're nominated a lot by other actors in the network. So perhaps nonprofits are identifying who is super resilient in the network and they rely heavily on them. For the second construct that I've presented to you today, adaptive capacity, we actually found an interesting finding that the more close you are, the more you're in that tightly knit network. So if you look at the image on the right, it's those very bright nodes, the yellow nodes. The more that you are close in the network, the less adaptive capacity that you have. And this kind of makes sense because if you are highly connected inside the network, you're not able to focus on the shared values and working together to solve problems within your organization, because a lot of the energy and effort that the nonprofit's engaging in is focused outward, outside of the organization. And so our final point here is, what does this mean? So we draw a couple conclusions. One is that when nonprofits are forming relationships, we would encourage them to form relationships with the needs of the organization in mind. We know that resilience is coming from building a lot of diverse relationships. And so being a broker and being between others is a helpful property if resilience is the goal of the organization. On the flip side, because we saw that reduction in adaptive capacity for individuals who are particularly close, they're really central in the network. We argue that maybe if there are particularly needy partners that might harm a nonprofit's ability to maintain adaptive capacity, they should carefully maintain that relationship. And we know that an internal focus may help the organization. In addition, there was a text that we draw really heavily on, Nonprofits for Social Impact by Northwestern scholar Michelle Shumate and Catherine Cooper. And inside this text and on the website that I'll show you on the next slide, they have resources for nonprofits to take an inventory of their network, sort of to do what Molly and I did in terms of research as a self-assessment. And so we would encourage nonprofits who are thinking about the need for resilience and the need for adaptive capacity to engage with those networks. And we're just really excited for the opportunity to share our findings with you. And so here's my information, Molly's information, and then the nnsi.northwestern.edu is the website where you can find more information about the self-assessments that nonprofits can engage in. I'm excited to hang out more with you, Angie, and everyone in the room, and talk with you more.